This is the Mop Up Men podcast. My name's Justin Trinity. Along with me is co-host Kenny Baseball. So the Mets just signed James McCann to a 4-year, $40 million deal to be their starting catcher for the next 4 years. Now, Kenny, initial thoughts. James McCann goes to the Mets. It's the first big move that Steve Cohen has made as the Mets owner and Sandy Alderson has made under the Cohen administration. So, initial thoughts. Do you like the move? Do you not like the move? Go.
I actually like the move for them. I see both sides of it, but the reason I like the move is that if you're going to go after a guy like JT Realmuto, you're going to give him 5 years, 125 to 140 mil. And like we talked about in previous episodes, if you sign a guy like Realmuto, I honestly think it's going to turn out similar to Brian McCann-esque, where he's going to have 1 or 2 years where he plays like he should, and then he'll kind of fall off the last 3 years. So you're going to allocate a bunch of money towards Realmuto when you can get a next man up like McCann for a lot less. I know there's a little bit of risk there because he did sign him to 4 years, and also he is a small sample size catcher. He actually hasn't been amazing his whole career, and he boosted his stock so much this year in a shortened season that I could see how you could just point out, well, he's not actually that kind of player. He just played well for 60 games. So I could see that not working out, but I like it because you sign a guy that has potential to be a really good catcher, and you have so much money left now to insure yourself to get George Springer. And you can actually go after Bauer, too, if you really want to, which I don't think they're going to be done after George Springer. They might get 1 or 2 more guys after that, just like the 2009 offseason for the Yankees or even like the 2004 offseason for the Mets. So I like the move for them because it opens the door for a lot of other things to happen.
I think JT Realmuto is a very overrated player. Yeah, he's the best catcher in baseball right now. But, if you go back and you look at previous eras where you looked at who was the best catcher in baseball, it was like a Pudge Rodriguez, Mike Piazza, Joe Mauer, Buster Posey. These are guys that are on a completely different level than JT Realmuto. He's the best that there is now, but he's not great. He's not like the kind of guy that you acquire and you're like, okay, our lineup has been solidified. We just got our number 4 hitter.
Yeah, he's not that kind of guy. It's not like the 2000 Mets or like the 99 Mets where you get Mike Piazza and it's like that's going to just put your team on a whole other level, your offense on a whole other level. It's not like that.
Yeah, so I liked the McCann move actually because now you've basically saved $80 to $90 million by not getting Realmuto, and now you can go after a Springer, a Bauer, even a DJ LeMahieu, and I think, like you said, they're going to get one of those, big-name guys, and then I think that they're going to make a big splash in a trade. I could see them signing Bauer, and then maybe missing out on DJ or Springer, and then trading for Francisco Lindor in some overpay type deal.
Yeah, and I think that it makes them scary because you already know they're going to spend a ton of money, and then they just saved a lot of money in their first big move where they needed to address a need, and now they have just a pot full of money now to go after anybody they want. And but it sounds like, so the recent news, it sounds like George Springer is their main target right now, so they're really going to ensure that they get George Springer. And it sounds like the B option is Trevor Bauer. I wouldn't be surprised if they get both.
I wouldn't be shocked if they get both either.
But it sounds like Springer's the next guy they're going to sign, and it sounds like they're going to make sure they get him.
Yeah, now let's talk about kind of Mets fans' reactions to this, because all the Mets fans, they thought that, we have Steve Cohen, he's the richest owner in baseball now. He's going to go out there and he's going to get JT Realmuto, he's going to get Lindor, he's going to get Bauer, he's going to get Springer, he's going to get all these guys because he has all this money and he doesn't know what to do with it. And then they go out and they get Trevor May, I think, to a 2-year, $15 million deal. Am I getting the name right?
Yeah, it was Trevor May.
They get May, and then they get James McCann. They kind of get the B option. To JT Realmuto. And all these Mets fans are like, what the heck? What are we, bargain hunting now?
Yeah, I think that it depends if if they miss out on George Springer and Trevor Bauer, then I could see raising hands in the air. If they end up getting those 2 guys, they'll look back at these moves and they'll be like, that set you up to get these guys. Trevor May is, I think that's a decent signing for them. Nothing that's going to really push the needle too far, but it's a decent signing.
It's an okay signing. I think he's actually a very underrated reliever. So getting him was a very nice start, and then kind of getting McCann sort of solidified to their lineup, I think, in a lot of ways. I don't even think they need George Springer, to be completely honest. I think they have a good enough lineup the way it is now with bringing in James McCann that they should focus on adding another starting pitcher.
Yeah, that would be huge for them. It just seems like a huge hole for them has always been center field. It's always a problem for them. Going back to even Carlos Beltran, they needed Beltran to clog up that center field hole. And since Beltran's left, it's always kind of been a revolving door of guys that failed prospects and different things like that. So I think they're going to try and ensure themselves. It seems like catcher and center field are always those two positions for them that they struggle with.
Yeah, they struggle with developing good players up the middle a lot of times.
Yeah.
The other thing is, do you think Mets fans' expectations this offseason are a little bit outsized? Like, do you think that their expectations are so high? New owner, he's going to throw a ton of money into this team, and what we've seen so far has actually been, I think, restrained moves. I think Cohen has actually made some moves that are kind of, I think nice bargain moves in a lot of ways.
I think that if you're a Mets fan that understands like good baseball budget moves, I think then you're going to be happy about it. If you're just looking for the names, like say like a fair weather fan just looking for the big names, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you're actually looking at it like what it sets them up for, you realize how much these moves have addressed needs, and you still are set up for future moves. So they should appreciate how he's actually making smart baseball moves instead of pulling like say like a Dombrowski where he's just throwing money at guys when it might just be overdone and you don't need to do it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny because I think a lot of Mets fans thought that they were going to be the new Yankees now that they had Stephen Cohen being their owner. He's going to be like
the Mets will never be the Yankees.
No, let's be honest. Yeah, the Mets are forever going to be pretenders. I think they're going to win a World Series once every 30 years, and it's going to be a big deal.
The Mets are going to do what they've done their whole career, their whole like existence, where they're going to pretty much what the Mets do is they'll be mediocre to terrible for about 5 or 6 to 7 years, and then they'll all of a sudden out of nowhere be a Cinderella team for a season, and everybody goes nuts. They're that team out of nowhere that wins like in '69. They were terrible in the 70s, and then they built themselves up in the 80s. They win the World Series. They go back to horrible in the 90s. They build themselves back up again in the late 90s. They go to the World Series in 2000s. The Yankees crushed them in the 2000 World Series. It was abysmal performance out of them. And then in 2004, they rebuilt the team again. They almost got to the World Series in 2007, I think it was. Six. And then they were terrible through the early 2010s, and they Cinderella teamed in 2015, and now they're back to like decent, and then they're probably going to peak for one season again in like 3 years or 2 years.
Yeah, it seems like they make a lot of like really good moves to like get them to that point. It's like they get they trade for Keith Hernandez and Gary Carter, and they get like those guys that get them to the World Series and win the World Series in '86. Then they go out and they get Al Leiter and Mike Piazza, and they kind of like make themselves into a World Series contender. Then in '06, they go out and they get Carlos Delgado, Carlos Beltran, and they get themselves
Billy
Wagner. They get themselves to that team. Then they in
Andy
15,
Chavez.
Andy Chavez. Then they go out and they get Cespedes in 2015, and it's like they double down on making terrible moves.
Yeah.
Like they get Cespedes again, and then he like never plays. Like that's what the Mets do. They like get themselves into a position where they could be a perennial contender, and then they just double down on their worst instincts.
Yeah. At least they're willing to spend now. Like that was their thing. Like because of course the Wilpons they got wrecked by Bernie Madoff, and they didn't want to spend after that. That became their demise for like the last decade, pretty much. Why they wouldn't go to the next step. And they finally get an owner now that's willing to spend. It would just be perfect, though, if all of a sudden they're just still mediocre after they finally get the owner they've been
I would
praying
love
for
that.
so long.
The Mets are that like
Mets move.
The Mets are like that intriguing team that you watch when the Yankees aren't playing. You're like, oh, let's go over to SNY, and they always have like a couple likable players that you root for, like Pete Alonso. I'm a huge Jacob deGrom guy, but it's like they always just like Brody Van Wagenen, perfect example. He takes a team that's like kind of on the border, and then he makes the big move to get Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz. Diaz sucks, and then Cano tests positive for steroids again. The organization just like as soon as they get into a good position, they just shoot themselves in both feet.